Greetings everyone. Welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the films from 2016, Passengers. Before we start, I hope your day be filled with sunshine and smile. Enjoy the story. Over 5,000 colonists along with 238 crew members are being transported by the starship Avalon of the Homestead Company to the planet Homestead over the course of a 120-year voyage. This is a part of the mass migration of people leaving Earth as a result of ecocide and the demise of the biosphere. While the crew and colonists are hibernating in their pods, the ship's energy shield, which is automatically aimed toward the asteroid barrage, is being severely taxed by an incoming stream of space debris as it moves through a sizable asteroid field, resulting in a malfunction that awakens one passenger, mechanical engineer Jim Preston. 90 years ahead of his scheduled awakening time, one of the large debris pieces penetrates the energy shield and collides with an unknown part of the ship. Just 4 months before they arrived at their destination, on their final approach to the planet, the passengers were supposed to awaken. After a day, Jim discovers he woke up too early and that he is the only person awake on the entire ship. ID badges control every function on board the ship. Also, Jim has access to very few areas of the ship because his ID badge designates him as a low-level worker. It will take 19 years for any messages to reach Earth, and it will take 55 years for the earliest response. He even chooses what to eat every day based on seniority. Because the bridge needs special permission, he is unable to cross it. Jim attempts to fix the hibernation pod after discovering the engineering manual. Jim is also unable to return to hibernation. The entry door of the bridge is heavily guarded when he tries to break in. The only person he has company for this time is Arthur, an android bartender played by Michael Sheen. Jim is left alone for a year, spending his time in a luxurious suite on the ship, playing basketball, dancing off, and video games. Jim considers killing himself by opening the space dock airlock without his spacesuit on, but he can't bring himself to do it. He spots stunning Aurora Lane in her pod one day. She is a writer with a light-hearted personality, as seen by her video profile. Jim awakens Aurora and claims her pod malfunctioned similarly to his after debating with Arthur the propriety of manually reviving her for companionship. As Jim describes everything he has done to improve his circumstances, Aurora discovers he has been awake for more than a year. Just as Jim had tried, Aurora, heartbroken that she might get old and pass away before the ship reaches Homestead 2, makes a vain attempt to go back into hibernation. As a gold-class passenger, Aurora enjoys many benefits that Jim was never able to enjoy, like the swimming pool and better coffee. She also has access to a far better menu selection in the cafeteria. She eventually comes to terms with her circumstances and starts penning a book about her adventures. According to Aurora, Homestead Company made $8 quadrillion from its first colony planet, proving that colony planets are big business. 20% of all colonists' earnings during their lifetime on the new planet goes to the homestead. As Jim and Aurora get closer playing video games, dancing off, basketball, going out to eat, watching movies, and other activities that he used to do alone, they start dating. A year later, the two become enamored with each other. Jim unintentionally gives Arthur permission to tell Aurora the truth just as he is about to pop the question. She is so upset that she is berating, avoiding, and even hitting Jim. The ship's malfunctions continue to steadily worsen during this time. They are hardly noticeable at first, but shortly after, Gus, a chief deck officer, is awakened by another pod failure. The group gains access to the ship's bridge, which Jim attempted, but was unsuccessfully, to breach using Gus personnel code. They find numerous cascading failures in all of the ship's systems, but the cause is not disclosed by the computer. When Gus examines all 3 pods to determine the cause of their malfunction, he discovers that Jim woke up Aurora. However, Aurora continues to accuse Jim of robbing her of her life, saying it is equivalent to murder. Gus acknowledges that Jim is suicidal and warns Aurora that a drowning man like Jim will cling to any life support, even though he does not approve of Jim's behavior. But one day Aurora loses her sense of gravity and becomes trapped in the swimming pool, narrowly avoiding death when gravity is restored in time. The ship will eventually break down, killing the crew and passengers if it is left unattended. Gus is given a few hours to live after being diagnosed with pansystemic necrosis, progressive organ failure, by the ship's automated medical suite, the autodoc, after he becomes seriously ill. Gus blames it on the numerous setbacks of his hibernation pod. Gus gives Jim and Aurora his employee code and ID badge before passing away so they can enter crew-only areas and attempt to fix the ship. Jim and Aurora discover hull fractures from the collision with the asteroid 2 years prior. They discover a hole close to the fusion reactor in the ship. The asteroid strike severely damaged the computer module controlling the ship's fusion reactor power plant, which is what led to the cascade malfunctions when the other system's processing power was redirected to try and keep it operating. They swap out the damaged module, but the external vent malfunctions when the computer tries to release the reactor's trapped plasma reaction. Jim is compelled to use the manual vent tube controls to spacewalk outside and release the plasma. Jim learns that while Aurora starts venting from inside the ship, he needs to stay in the tube to keep the vent open. She acknowledges her deep affection for him and says she fears losing him and being left alone. Jim makes a makeshift heat shield and makes it through the venting. But as his tether breaks and his damaged spacesuit starts to lose oxygen, he is launched into space. Jim is found in space, clinically dead, and is brought back to life in the autodock by Aurora. With its reactor fixed, the Avalon resumes regular operations. Jim discovers that the autodock can serve as a hibernation pod for a single individual after burying Gus in space, and he demands that Aurora use it for the duration of the journey. Knowing that she wouldn't see Jim again, she decides to stay up late with him. She accepts when he gives her the improvised engagement ring he made earlier. 88 years later, just before reaching Homestead 2, the passengers and crew of the ship awaken on time. They find a small cabin, lush vegetation, flying birds, and a massive tree with trailing vines in the ship's grand concourse. The amazing life Aurora and Jim had on the Avalon is described in an audio recording of her story.